much. Next question, please.
Yeah, I am a socialist. I'm also South Asian, and I'm not racist, and I'm for affirmative action.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Let's hear it.
And my question is, you know, Mr. D'Souza, what do you have to say about, I mean, the fact of segregation in society? I mean, whenever you talk about discrimination, you always throw up the question of individuals. Like, you know, a black guy got a job because he was black. Is that right? No. You know, that's what you say. But what you don't say is that a black person born in this society has 60% of chance to be born in the inner cities, has, you know, three times more chance to be poor than whites. I mean, there's the problem of segregation. Affirmative action goes a step towards solving that, whereas dismantling affirmative action goes towards resegregation. And not only that, it comes along with political policy. I mean, this is about politics, not just about academics. It
Thanks
goes
very
along
much.
with
Thank you.
dismantling of welfare, etc.
Thank you. We've had this question before. Would you like to respond just briefly?
Well, I just want to point out that your use of the term segregation is essentially meaningless, because segregation is legal separation required by law. Segregation doesn't mean giving a test to a bunch of people and taking the best guys who win and then saying that's segregation because this group happened to do better than that group. That's not segregation. That's merit.
This is a question for both speakers. You have alluded to gender in your discussion, yet not made it a part of this debate. My question is, how would the principles you have stated in this debate change or not change if they were to be applied to gender, which is, of course, part of the affirmative action question?
Very briefly, please.
It is true, we are more troubled about race preferences than we are over alumni preferences or gender preferences. Professor Wu implies that that's because we're all unconscious racists. Why else would we have this greater moral discomfort? I have a perfectly good reason. We didn't fight a civil war over alumni preferences. Martin Luther King didn't say that he wanted a society where we are judged by the status of whether or not our dad went to Brown. We had a civil war and a civil rights movement over the idea of eradicating race as the decisive factor of law and public policy. And what Professor Wu now wants to do is to put race back into the law and use it as a decisive basis of decision making, and rightly we are morally troubled by that.
Thank you.
It seems that Mr. D'Souza's beliefs on affirmative action are largely based on the idea of a deracinated society in which race doesn't matter. And I would ask you, what about the idea that a deracinated society is a myth? It's ahistorical and simplistic, and there are questions involved in terms of who sets the rules of the game, whose language are we talking in, such as in the culture of business. Who sets the values of capitalism? If a boss is looking to promote someone, are they going to promote someone they feel comfortable with? And is that fair for people of color who would have to act white in order to feel comfortable with this boss? And I just want to see how you respond to the idea that all of these questions are inherently racialized, and to pretend that race is not a factor is simplistic.
Thank you. Please.
The reason that colleges and universities introduce standardized tests is to fight the kind of bias that you describe. In the old boy system, you would have the admissions director at Princeton call up the college counselor at Choate or Deerfield and say, "Whom do you have for me this year, Whitworth?" This was the old boy network. Now, a lot of poor Irish and Catholic and Jewish kids who studied in poor inner cities in New York said, "Listen, forget the old boy network. Give us all a test. Let us all take a verbal test, a math test, and take the guys who score the best." That's the fair system. The point is, merit was established to fight racial nepotism. And it's a great irony that the civil rights movement, after championing merit in the 60s, has now come to rediscover the virtues of nepotism. And so you have Professor Wu saying, what's wrong with the alumni preferences? Let's keep those in-state preferences. What's wrong with the old boy network? We just want to be part of it. That's what his argument has come down to, and that's why the civil rights movement has lost the moral high ground.